All right, guys, what is happening? Sean Ames here from Heart of America FPV. Today I was doing some prep, getting ready for our Freedom Spec Pura Vida race that's getting ready to happen in Costa Rica. I fly down there in exactly 10 days. I'm going down a few days early to spend some time with my wife and getting ready for the race and that kind of thing. But today I was doing a little bit of prep, and one of the biggest things that has to be considered when prepping for a drone race of any kind is absolutely the RF situation. RF stands for radio frequencies, and our drones utilize radio frequency control and video signals to be able to operate them. So our video happens in a drone race for sure over the 5.8 range, and the control, most people these days are on 2.4 gigahertz for control or 900 megahertz for control if they're old school, and I think that pretty much covers everybody at this point, either 900 megahertz or 2.4. Now it's very important that you get your Wi-Fi situation kind of figured out ahead of time, and you're not just plugging in a random Wi-Fi router that you bought at Walmart and expecting everything to go hunky-dory. You got pretty much a 50-50 chance on whether or not it's going to destroy your event or not. There was a big race recently, and they had to kind of scramble their frequency set because they were saying that F4 or F2 was getting kind of trampled by some sort of bad RF in the situation. My guess is it was a Wi-Fi router that they did not have permission or access to unplug, that was set to auto or maybe even fixed to a bad channel, and yeah, it was giving them all kinds of trouble. So what I wanted to show you guys today was how I get ready for a race, and if you're a drone pilot, even if you fly drones in your backyard, you don't ever want to have trouble with RF. And this is something that you could probably do and take into consideration. So the first things first, over here on the right hand side, this is a Wikipedia page that has to do with Wi-Fi channels. Countries, different Wi-Fi channels are legal in. I guess I should probably look up Costa Rica. It's probably pretty similar to what the US uses. And you can see here on the left side of this right window, there's a channel number, these arbitrary numbers, and then they correspond to a frequency. Now on the left side, this left screen here, I've got my router settings. And actually, this isn't the router settings. I've got a router set up as an access point. Here are the settings here. So 2.4 and 5 gigahertz that I can adjust. This is going to be used for race ops. I didn't buy this special. This is a router I had a few years ago when I moved into my new house. A lot of the networking stuff was kind of pro level and already in place. And so this is just a Wi-Fi router that I've had around. I plugged it in to make sure I could do the necessary adjustments. But I want to kind of point your attention to a few things. You can do channel bandwidth. In this, it can be 20, 40, or 80. I just went middle of the road. Obviously, the wider the band is, I'm guessing that you might have better speed. So if we're at site and we're having trouble streaming and it's not the bandwidth of our connection and it could be the bandwidth of our Wi-Fi, I might change this, but I'm just going to go with middle of the road. If for some reason I am getting Wi-Fi bleed, I'm going to go with 20 megahertz, a narrower band. But for the purposes of our stuff, I think 40 will be fine. Here is where the magic happens. This is what you really got to pay attention to, and that is control channel. I am choosing channel 48. There's a specific reason for that. So you can see if I open this up, there's auto. You don't want to use auto because it's going to use any one of those, and essentially you're going to have a 50-50 shot of either destroying your FPV video, that would be these last four, or having good video with these first four. I'm going with 48 because as you can see here, and it's interesting, these essentially line up with what's legal for the most part in the US. So you can see that channel 36 through 48 are all legal for use in the US, and then channels above that, things get a little weird until you get up to channel 149, and as you can see, that's the first channel over here on the left that is available again, 149 through 161, and it's not utilizing all of them. Maybe if it's on auto, it might allow itself to select more channels. But yeah, looking at this, essentially a handful of channels between 149 and 161 are available because those have the nice green yes for being legal in the United States. The next thing to pay attention to is up here in the low channels, 36 through 48. They are all super low range. So 5150 to 5170, 48 is 5230. And those are way out of the 5 gigahertz band that we would normally use for drone racing. But let's go ahead and select the one that I selected. Now, while we're in Costa Rica, we're going to be using what's called Raceband 4. If you haven't seen this webpage, this is one you absolutely need to have on your favorites list. It's called ET's IMD Tabler, and it lets you kind of get a feel and understand how different frequency sets play into each other. And you can see here that I did a bunch of testing just to make sure. This was last night when I was trying to choose a frequency, which one I was going to use. Here's our frequency set. You can see here IMD rating, and what IMD is essentially harmonic distortion. So two channels can combine together to create interference on a third channel. Let's see a bad one here. Even raceband, we can do raceband. So you can see the reason why raceband gets polarized. If you do raceband 8, the reason why polarization is important, because those channels will absolutely harmonically interfere on one another, and it's got a rating of negative 635 if you're not, using polarization. So that's why we should just get completely away from polarization, because no one ever uses it, right? And we have those trouble. But you can do 6 up with IMD 6C. It has a rating of 29, which is not terrible. But yeah, we like to do Raceband 4 because it's perfect. It's 100 is best. It's 100 out of 100. That's the frequency set that we'll be on in Costa Rica. But let's go ahead and add in our Wi-Fi frequency. So if our Wi-Fi router is on 5240, and that's the plan, and I hit enter, you see it causes absolutely zero issues. You can see that 5240 and 5658, they do combine together to make interference on 6 gigahertz or 5584 or 5473 or 5399, but that's no problem. So there's no problem with using 5240 in that sense. But what if our router was on auto, or maybe someone selected, I like 151, and they were going to put it on channel 151 on the router, maybe it automatically did. You can see it's got a rating of 0, which isn't as bad as 650 like Raceband 8, but it's still pretty freaking bad. So it's causing some harmonic mess on a few different channels. So you can see where that's problematic. Or even worse, what if it's on 149 5745? You can see that there, and it might not even be harmonic distortion, but it could be just the fact that 5745 is pretty freaking close to 5732. 159 would be 795. So that one obviously causes a ton of issues. Yeah, Wi-Fi matters. Let's go back to, no, that's not ours. It's 51, so no, 52. 5240. This is what we're running. That's what we're planning on running. So that's what the science says. I've got my RF Explorer up there for a reason. So let's go back to my routers page. Let's see what would happen if we were on 153. Let's hit apply and see what the RF Explorer does here. See if it does anything. Might be kind of disappointed if it doesn't. All right, doesn't look like much yet. Oh, there we go. Just like that. Now we've got this spike at 5764. Yeah, look at that. So 5765. Wow, massive spike. Yeah, it's pretty gnarl. So there was a race here recently, a kind of a high profile race, and they had a good frequency set picked out from the beginning. Anytime you're using the E channels, it's typically because old school gear didn't have access to raceband. That's really the only reason it would ever make sense to use any E channels, is because some of the old school VTXs didn't have, raceband on them. So beyond raceband 4, the next best frequency set includes some E channels. That frequency set also required F2 in the mix, and F2 is 5760. So you can see that if my Wi-Fi router was on channel 153, someone's trying to fly on 5760, they're going to have a bad day. And so they had to change it. They ended up changing it to F4, which then caused all kinds of harmonic distortion on the other channels. So frequency sets are a big deal, and making sure that, if you're going to make an adjustment to a frequency set, that it's a good choice is important. But let's fix it. Let's do what we're going to do. So I chose the highest frequency of the good frequencies, and that's number 48. Honestly, I didn't have a ton of logic in doing that, but that is what I did. And so let's go ahead and get this router back on that. And then there's one other place that I want to show you some adjustments that can be made. So obviously on 5 gigahertz, like we can choose. We know where the video channels are going to be, and we know which frequencies are going to cause issues and which ones don't. If I were smarter, I would probably figure that out to a certain degree for 2.4 as well, but I'm not. I actually don't really know how the radios work on 2.4. I know that there's frequency hopping, so it's going to be a wider swath, but whether or not you could lock your Wi-Fi router on 2.4 down in a way to completely avoid control links, I don't know if that's possible. So what I typically do with my 2.4 band on a Wi-Fi router, I do a couple things. I make my channel bandwidth as narrow as possible. I did 20 megahertz on my bandwidth. And then the next thing I do for me is over here in the pro settings. So as you can see, if I go to 5.8 gigahertz down here, my TX power adjustment, since I know that my 5.8 is way out of band, not going to cause interference for anybody, I've got that sucker cooking. That's probably 1 watt. It's really putting the power out. Now, if I'm having issues, I can come in here and tailor that back though, but for now I'm going to leave that at 100%. But check out what I did for 2.4. Really, 2.4 for me is typically just in case I have a piece of equipment that will not connect to Wi-Fi on 5.8. It's nice to have the 2.4 band. I had an old laptop, actually the one I used to use for race control. This is probably why my mindset is this way. It would not connect to a network on 5.8. It would only connect to a network on 2.4. So that's why I always leave 2.4 open. I make the bandwidth as narrow as possible, and then you can see here my TX power adjustment is lower, 10%. So yeah, that's what I do to set up. Yeah, lock those suckers down. Like I said, this is just an ASUS router that I had. So the big thing is if you can just know if it's over 100 on the Wi-Fi channel, it's bad for FPV. If it's under 50, it's good for FPV. Just anything you do, feel free to get onto that IMD tabler and see how it's going to affect it. Pop open an RF Explorer and see what kind of noise floor you got. And yeah, hopefully your FPV events will continue to be awesome. So thanks for checking this out. We're going to catch you next time on Heart of America FPV. Later.